As we shared last week, we would have frequent meetings as it relates to the current state of affairs here in the city as we traverse through a pandemic and traverse through a period of protests and this justice movement that we are part of in our nation during this time. Today we have just a few announcements that we wanted to discuss as it relates to both COVID-19 and this nation's justice movement. We'll first start with the announcement. Many are aware at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we started with a number of different educational campaigns to strongly encourage and urge residents to stay in and to tell a friend and to stay home and to stay safe, where you saw a myriad amounts of billboards, digital communication, radio, and all other modes of communication to encourage residents to stay in as much as possible and to encourage their friends to follow suit to ensure that we help slow the community spread. And so in continuation of that public education campaign, today we're announcing our Keep Covered, Keep Your Distance campaign. And this new campaign updates our Stay In and Tell a Friend campaign. We'll see and hear this message around the city reminding residents and visitors in Little Rock that despite the state's reopening, we are still in a pandemic and people are still getting sick and there are still deaths occurring right here in our state, as well as in Central Arkansas and the state's capital city. We are looking at the data. While the city of Little Rock has seen some drops, we remain in the top 3 or 4 as it relates to different increases in the COVID-19 confirmed cases. And we understand, after listening to a number of doctors, there's a possibility to see a surge between now and September. And we want to, again, be very proactive and not reactive with the public health, safety, and welfare of all of our residents. And want to ensure that at all times possible that we remain socially and physically distant to ensure that we stop the slower spread of the coronavirus. Also, I've asked our city attorney to draft an executive order to require face coverings in public spaces that do not interfere with the commerce restrictions within the state's order. However, we do feel it necessary to have public restrictions as we are traversing around when we cannot keep social distance between one another. We expect our city's attorney's office to have this executive order prepared as quickly as possible. He is still going through the legal restraints and should have that form sometime early next week. We also will be having a public discussion within the city board around these different facts as well. In addition, we are purchasing another round of 10,000 face masks. If I will recall your attention, during the early stages of COVID-19, we understood there were healthcare disparities and also disparities with financial insecurity where everyone could not have a face covering or a mask. And so the city of Little Rock took it upon itself due to some FEMA requirements that we could get some FEMA reimbursement, that we were able to purchase 10,000 masks, and we were very targeted in the location where we passed those masks out in very unserved and underserved areas in partnership with Kroger's and Edwards Food Giant. And since we're now making the step and working with our city attorney to have a requirement for public settings, when we're in public settings and cannot remain socially and physically distant, that we will have another round of 10,000 masks for those that are unserved and underserved. In addition to purchasing these, we want to ensure that everyone understands that you use any type of face covering. You can use any type of N95 mask, the mask that we see generally in spacings, but also just face coverings in general. And when we cover our face, we're more apt to be non-responsive to the COVID-19 virus based on healthcare guidelines. Today, members of our board of directors have joined me for this important announcement because city leadership is united in understanding the threat to the public health is very real. I want to take time to acknowledge City Directors Doris Wright, Kathy Webb, and Kathy Peck, who have been ardent supporters on prioritizing public health, safety, and welfare in their own individual roles as members of the Board of Directors, but also as leaders in our community inside City Hall and outside City Hall with their respective industries that they represent. And they continue to keep forward public health, safety, and welfare for all of our residents and have been stalwart leaders in ensuring that we keep this a priority. It is critical that we take these proactive steps to flatten this curve this summer with the understanding of the information that we're receiving from members of our COVID-19 healthcare task force. So again, I want to take time to acknowledge City Director Kathy Peck, as we all know, is a storied restaurateur and has really been leading the way on a number of different things as it relates to public health, safety, and welfare, as well as City Director Kathy Webb, who has been a storied person in the restaurant industry as well, but now is a great leader in solving food insecurity here in our city as well as our state. So thank you. And as well as City Director Doris Wright, who has been a storied community leader for quite some time, even before she was a city director, and is very well versed in parks development and recreation for our youth and keeping our youth engaged. So thank you so much, City Director Doris Wright, from that standpoint. Now, I do want to change course, and these as well, these city directors stand in support of the next announcement. I think we all understand, as we continue to update our police department's policies and procedures, I'm announcing a new order today regarding neck restraints, commonly called chokeholds. I want to ensure that as we are a part of this period in time of what I call a justice movement, the city of Little Rock has been ahead of the curve. Many understand, before we were elected, we ran on the internal why of uniting the city, moving us from being disconnected to connected, but we also had a strong focus on police reforms and accountability. Many things that we've already been able to do in consultation prior to this time of this period of protest and period of justice movement. We've enacted a citizens review board. We already have in place an independent review committee of the Little Rock Police Department's policies, procedures, and practices. Just 2 weeks ago, this board passed unanimously $760,000 for body-worn cameras. We've also focused a lot in times of issues with officer-involved shootings that we have now a critical incident video policy and procedure process. And we continue to lead the way in police reforms and accountability. All of this is a part of our ACT plan, to be accountable, to be clear, to be transparent. And so, in addition to the things that we shared 2 weeks ago in regards to the duty to intervene policy, as well as in custody deaths, this is yet another piece of our ACT plan. So we want to take this time to highlight these changes that we continue to make because we've been listening to many of the protesters throughout this time and many community leaders that understand that we have to employ more police reforms of accountability, not only for the community, but also for the police department as we all are working together to have a 21st century community policing model right here in the city of Little Rock. So we want to take time to thank the city board members who are here with us today. Some could not be here due to scheduling issues, but they stand in solidarity with these police reforms and accountability. Now I want to take this time to explain a little bit more detail this new police policy, part of an executive order in regards to neck restraints being banned. Chief Keith Humphrey.
Thank you, Mayor. To the citizens of Little Rock, I just want to say thank you for giving us the opportunity, being open-minded, giving us the time to work on policies and update the policies to reflect our efforts to do 21st century policing. We have for a while banned chokeholds here in the city of Little Rock and Little Rock Police Department. But however, we can do a better job. We have in the past used a technique, vascular neck restraint, which is a defensive tactic. We believe at this time in changing, that is a technique that should only be used in the case of an imminent threat against someone's life or an officer's life. We are going to stop teaching that. It will be part of the past. However, we do realize that there are some officers that still, but that will be prohibited unless they can justify that it's to save someone's life or their lives. This is a new day in law enforcement, and I want to make that very clear. The things that we used to do, even as recent as last week, we cannot still do some of those same things. This is a good move. We saw that with George Floyd's death, we saw the horrible technique and the horrible actions of that officer, which has brought a lot of negative attention to our profession. I believe here in the city that we do have fine men and women that want to do the right thing. But as the chief of police, I have to make sure that policies are in place that prevent us from having certain tools or certain techniques that we do not need. We do need more de-escalation techniques. We do need more officer wellness. These are things that we should be focusing on, more community-oriented events. We still have a force continuum. Things, it goes from officer presence, unfortunately, all the way up to deadly force. I don't think there's anyone in the city that doesn't realize at some point, or there's going to be a situation where an officer might have to go from officer presence to, God forbid, deadly force. But you still have to have those protocols in place to do anything that you can do to de-escalate any chance of you having to get to that point. Sometimes we just can't, and I know for a fact the citizens understand, but anything we can do to reduce that chance, we have to do that. And I appreciate the mayor doing this. We've been auditing our policies and procedures since coming here. There have been changes, there will continue to be changes, and I think this is a good move, not only for the citizens of Little Rock and the Little Rock Police Department, but I think throughout the nation, you're going to start seeing these type of actions take place.
Again, I just want to take time to thank Chief Keith Humphrey for continuing to lead with implementing 21st century community policies within the Little Rock Police Department as we all remain accountable, clear, and transparent. Also, again, want to reiterate praise to the city board members that are here before me today and those that weren't able to attend as they stand in solidarity with all of these policies, and we've been able to visit with many of them, and just grateful that they were able to attend as we discuss these new policies here in the city of Little Rock. We'll now take time. Well, just one brief order. I know there's many things that have been happening on the food insecurity standpoint as the city of Little Rock has been a leader. I want to ask either Director Peck or Director Webb to just give a very brief update on our food with Mosaic. Just very briefly.
This morning we distributed food to 400 families at Mosaic Church. On Friday we'll be in Southwest Little Rock. These two activities have concentrated on the Latinx community, but we have many, many other distribution points during the week that focus on underserved residents of Little Rock. And for more information, I believe that we can contact the city and get information on where those sites are. Thank you.
One of the things, the reason why I wanted to make sure that was shared, all three of these directors have been very involved, city directors Webb, Peck, and Wright, as well as all board members, as well as City Director Joan Adcock. It's my understanding, we do know at least of the last a week or so ago, we have already surpassed about 400,000 meals. And that is something that's been great news. We've been seeing that we've been a leader across the nation and working with World Central Kitchen, along with the Clinton Foundation and many other partners here in the city of Little Rock to process 400,000 meals. And I hear we may get close to 500,000 here pretty shortly. And that's because of this city board and the city leadership working in tandem with our strategic partners at the Clinton Foundation, Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance, Arkansas Food Bank, Central Arkansas Library System, the Little Rock School District, most importantly, because they've played a major role, as well as our Chief Education Officer, Jay Barth, who's been playing a major role with that as well. So with all that being said, we'll now open the floor for a brief amount of questions. Well, the question from Rachel is, when will the executive order take effect? As I shared, we've made the announcement that our city attorney is currently drafting the requirement for public spaces. We hope to have it completed by the early part of next week, and as soon as that's done, you will receive the notice on that, and it will also lay out the enforcement measures for that standpoint. And again, very similar to our curfew. Many times we have to move from just asking and encouraging. We have to share that it's important enough that we make it an order, important enough that we make it a part of city policy, and this is a city policy and directive to really encourage and urge our residents that we have to begin to wear a mask. And as we're receiving information from the healthcare community, that there's a possibility that the way the numbers are rolling is that we could have some serious issues come time September. And so we want to be very proactive and forward thinking and forward moving and reducing that. And so whatever we can do from a city perspective to reduce that spread, even now in the midst of now being a part of this pandemic, close to 90 to 100 some odd days, and that's the actions that we're going to take in the best interest of the public health, safety, and welfare of our residents. Next question. Yes, ma'am. Well, Little Rock has been looking into this policy for quite some time. I want to make it very clear that it's not in response to anything but for the fact that you can attest, if you talk to any of our city board members, that's been a constant comment and question over the last 2 weeks as we begin to see the rise across the entire state. And so this is something we've been thinking about for quite some time, and we want to always honor and respect the law that we currently have. And so in working with our city attorney, this is our best foot forward to be proactive and protective of the health, safety, and welfare. And under this particular executive order and directive and policy, it keeps us within being legal and not violating law. Yeah, the chokeholds, I'm signing that as soon as we leave here. It takes effect as quickly as possible. We've given Chief Keith Humphrey 30 days to revise the existing general orders and policies from that standpoint. So that's what you'll read in the executive order, but I'm signing that today to take effect as immediate as possible. Next question. Next. Chief, can you talk about the disciplinary process? But the answer is that there is a very strong disciplinary process.
So as you all know, we follow civil service guidelines when it pertains to discipline. So any of our discipline ranges from counseling up to termination. So it depends on the incident, it depends on the officer's actions, if they were justified or not. So it all depends. There's no one specific level of discipline for any type of violation for any policy. So it goes with our current policy based on the actions and the severity of it.
And you've seen that there's a way to escalate that discipline depending on the case, and so that's the reason why the chief wanted it. That's not an easy answer to answer, but to let you know there is a strong disciplinary process if that is violated, and due to our changes with our civil service. One last question. Yes, Chief Keith Humphrey, one of the main things, and I'll allow him to come speak for himself, that one of the main things that he discussed in his interview process is focus on de-escalation tactics and implicit bias training. I know for a fact he sent a number of folks to receive some certain types of training. He's made that a part of that process. It was already a part of the process here at the Little Rock Police Department, and he continues to emphasize and increase that. And even from his words today, you will know that it's even more intentional now. Chief Humphrey, you want to add any more?
Yeah, everything we do is about de-escalation. You've heard me say previously, this is not the same law enforcement profession that it was yesterday or a week before or 50 years ago. And so now our main focus is being proactive. I've said that from day one. So every part of our training, whether it's academy training, in-service training, external training, is focusing on de-escalation. Communicating with individuals. Is this a situation that you even need police response for? How much information can a call taker receive and pass on to those officers, because it might be a civil issue, it may not be. So anything we can do to prevent any type of escalation or any type of confrontation, we're doing that through emotional intelligence training, our use of force training, giving those verbal commands. making those verbal commands very clear so the individual understands and so other people hear you give those commands before you have to step to a certain level of force. So everything we're training from this point, everything we're training is based on de-escalation. That's part of 21st century policing. You'll continue to hear me say that, and we're really big into that platform.
Well, again, just want to take time to reiterate the praise and the gratefulness of the members of our city board and their support of doing all that we can to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our residents, and also the same as which as we continue to reform and hold ourselves accountable as it relates to police reform and accountability as we move forward in this current justice movement here in the city of Little Rock. That being said, thank you so much for everyone who's participated today. We really do appreciate you. Thank you.